good day. Thanks again for joining us for part 2 of our live panel with Unheard Voices from Salinas, our Allies Align. I want to thank the wonderful Wave Street Studio staff. I want to give a special shout out to Dane Torres and Danny and Miss Michaela Miller for coordinating these panels. And we have yet another dynamic team here today to talk about what it means to be an ally and their own stories about Salinas. I do first want to make a few comments about the first panel, and this information will be found at the Wave Street site. There'll be some notes in regards to what was brought up in part 1 of our panel. The Ohlone, Costanoan, Esselen Nation, you can find them on their website, Ohlone, Costanoan, EsselenNation.org. And we mentioned Tribal Councilwoman Louise J. Miranda Ramirez. You can learn more about their group and how to be supportive of their efforts. I also mentioned the Bill Pickett Rodeo. You can find them BillPickettRodeo.com. It's been going on for 35 years, and they have black rodeos that come to Oakland, LA, Washington, D.C., and Houston, Texas, I believe. And that was founded by Lou Vason. cityofsalinas.org/budget and financial reports. We talked a lot about the budget last time. We encourage our viewers to go and do the research and look at the numbers for themselves. And then we'll have some slides in regards to our Native American bounty and basically the genocides that happened here right in Monterey County. There's going to be a slide that will be accessible. And as we learn more, we'll share more. So wanted to put that out there. Today, I have the privilege to facilitate yet another conversation with Councilman Andrew Sandoval, who is an educational advocate. He represents District 5 and is a public servant and doing a lot of work in the city. I also have Miss Cary Swenson, who is an instructor through Hartnell. She's also a business owner of Sylvan Learning Center and is also a council candidate from a few years ago. And the magnificent MacGregor Eddy, who's been doing this a long time and has a lot of wisdom and knowledge. She is a human rights and peace activist and environmentalist, and I'll allow them to introduce themselves. So thanks again for being here, and let us begin. I'm going to start with Cary. If you would like to talk more about who you are, your Salinas story, and how you got connected to Salinas Juneteenth.
Yes, thank you, Asia. It's an honor to be here. So my name is Cary Swenson. Currently, I'm the owner of Sylvan Learning Salinas, and I also am an adjunct instructor at Hartnell College. I teach both at the main campus and I teach at the Castroville campus. I teach early American history, and then at the prison under the Rising Scholars Program, I teach late American history at Salinas Valley State Prison. A little bit about me. I grew up in Bellevue, Washington. I got my BA in education, 4th through 12th grade to teach history. And then I have a master's degree in history. And my focus is on Native American history. My mentor and friend was Vine Deloria Jr., who wrote Custer Died for Your Sid and God is Red. Excellent books you should read. So I moved to Salinas in 2009 when I purchased the Sylvan Learning, which at the time was on North Main, and I moved it over to North Davis about a year later. About a year or two into owning Sylvan, I decided I didn't know anyone here, I needed to make some friends, so the first group I got involved in was the Steinbeck Rotary Club, and I'm still a Steinbeck Rotarian. Then through Steinbeck I met Regina Gage, and then she asked me to be on the board of Meals on Wheels. So I deliver for Meals on Wheels and I'm on the board. I thought I was, I work with kids and students, maybe expand a little. And then through Rotary I met Chris Barrera and Andrew, and I became a member of the LULAC Council 2055. And then also through Rotary, I met Shannon Bliss, where I joined the board of Seeds for STEM, which is a startup to do ag STEM courses for our youth in Salinas. So in my connection with the Juneteenth celebration is through Asia. I met Asia when Chris Barrera was running for Salinas mayor in 2020. Mm-hmm. She was a great mentor and help.
Mentor. I don't know about that. We mentored each other. Go ahead.
she helped me to slow down a little, which I needed. And then also, last year, the fall of 2022, I ran for Salinas City Council District 3 against Steve McShane, and Asia was right there to help me. So that's my connection.
Thank you, Cary.
Well, my name is MacGregor Eddy. I moved to Salinas in 1975 from Michigan, where I was only 22 years old, and I went to Salinas to work for the United Farm Workers Organization, Cesar Chavez. This was before they were naming things after him. They were arresting him in those days, not naming things after him, because it's kind of funny. I might tell someone younger, oh, I came here to work for Cesar Chavez, and they'll say, the school or the library? And I have to say, the guy, and I feel really old. I mean, it makes me feel like I'm not that old. My kids have gone to Al Sal High and have been raised here, and I've been involved in Salinas. I'm a registered nurse. In the 1970s, I was involved in a movement that involved the United Rubber Workers, because we had a Firestone plant in those days that hired well-paid workers that were really a lot of like economic power in the union. They moved it to Mexico, to Cuernavaca, Mexico, because they could get cheaper labor. And so the factory closed. And all of those well-paid workers, they would have cars like lowriders. Kids can't afford those. I mean, young workers can't afford those cars. Now, they would have fancy cars. They'd have beautiful names. The girls had crystals of Castroville, the Latin pearls. They'd go down to Closter Park, and they'd have the diapers and the babies and playing horse. It was wonderful. And then it closed. Spreckles factory closed. There's been a steady loss of agricultural or the tires and Firestone industry in Salinas.
Manufacturing.
So the remaining industry is things like service and fast food that pays poorly, and agriculture, which has always been exempted from labor reform and pays poorly. And the cost of living has gone so high that it is not possible to earn a living wage and live in a decent home in Salinas below a certain level of education. And these are the people who create the wealth. These are the people, when I came to work for the United Farm Workers, this is what creates the wealth of this valley, and their considerations should be first. Because without them, the rest of us would have nothing. They are the source of the vast energy and history of this valley, are the people who come here to work. And they come in layers. The Filipinos came, and were, and then the Chinese came, the Chinese exclusion. There's layers of history. The internment of the Japanese who lost their Salinas flower sheds. There's so much history here. It's so rich. And you don't have to go far back. There's recent history. There's notable people that are from here. And I was on a committee in the 70s to save the county hospital when they were closing them all over the state. We did. We still have a county hospital. That was so long ago. We tried to have a Juneteenth celebration. Very few people came. This was back in the 80s.
Yeah,
it was
we were
just
talking
one little
about
church
that.
and a couple of people, and it was kind of funny. We were trying to cook international cultural cuisine at a Juneteenth, and it was funnier than it was.
You were telling me about the potato salad.
Yes,
on the
it's
right
like, what do you
over
mean
here.
you didn't make potato salad?
So you,
It was fun, but there's been effort always through Salinas. Salinas is a deeply multicultural town in its nature. It is normal to hear 3 languages every normal day in Salinas. They may not be the same 3, but during the day, unless you're living in a sealed bubble, you're going to hear 3 languages.
and real quick, MacGregor, service learning.
Oh,
and
I
your
did service.
activism,
Oh,
and
I'm on.
real quick.
See,
before
all
we-
these years, I've been a
I
peace
know.
activist. So all through it, I've been doing things through service learning at CSUMB, trying to give young people at high schools an alternative to military, like counter recruitment. You could join the Peace Corps, the AmeriCorps. I've protested every single war: Grenada, Panama, you name it, the first Gulf War, the second Gulf War, you name it, I've been always, but to me, peace is international, it's our city, and in the 1980s, there was a lot of gang violence in Salinas, and Salinas has pulled itself together, and it has been resolved, and it has been a remarkable accomplishment. And people who were here in the 80s and 90s and remember, and this Community Alliance for Safety and Peace, I think, is a remarkable commitment from everyone, from the police to the social work to the, it's just remarkable. So I want to say I love living in Salinas, and I think it's a hardworking town.
Wonderful. Andrew, your Salinas story and how you got involved with the Salinas Juneteenth.
Sure. Well, I was born and raised in the city of Salinas. I'm blessed to live in the same home where I grew up in. I'm, happy to be with my lovely wife and my 4 kids. And, I was in business for 15 years. I had a business in the mall. I used to do wedding dresses, quinceañera dresses, tuxedos. I used to do alterations for many years. Went to school here and just raised here. My wife was raised here as well. And basically a couple of years ago, my kids went to a charter school, which I didn't know a whole lot about. But one day my daughter invited me to go to a PTA meeting. So that's how I first got involved. And then, of course, I started asking questions. And questions are not very well received often in a lot of systems and government. And that led me down a path of more questions, which the administration did not like. I got involved and I found out how the educational system works and how it doesn't work, and how government works and how government doesn't work, and how some people are responsive and some aren't. And so that got me involved in running for office. So I ran for office in 2018. I came very close. I lost by less than 1%, 87 votes.
87.
I managed to raise about $6,000, and I think my opponent raised almost $30,000. So being overspent, almost 6-1, but only losing by 87 votes was difficult, but also an accomplishment. And so my kids grew up. At the time, I think they were all either in middle school or elementary school. And 4 years later, here we are. I ran again, and with my kids' help and the community's help, I got elected. This time I won by over 500 votes.
All right.
Same opponent. So, and I've been serving Salinas as a city council member for, 8 months now?
8 months. 8 months. But you've been serving Salinas longer than that. You want to talk about your role with LULAC, food distribution. Tell the whole story. We got time. Real
Sure.
quick.
I've been involved with LULAC, a national civil rights organization. That's actually how I met Asia. We were advocating, I believe at the time, for school district meetings to be publicly recorded and posted. And so we were attending those. Now most of them are still are, with the exception, unfortunately, to our county office of education for some reason, but due to COVID. And I saw Asia speaking about a situation with her son, and after that we approached her and we worked together to try to get some resolution. And then I told her she should get involved, and I could say I maybe have stalked Asia in order to get that
Don't
to
put it on
happen.
camera.
It's okay. It's okay to say that.
Yeah.
I've been accused of worst. Yes, and I'm a firm believer that we need people in government, whether it be at school boards or any of our commissions or committees, with a real heart for their community. And maybe people don't have the education, but I think more importantly is the heart. So that's how I met Asia.
And your George Floyd rally at the rodeo, you and Chris.
Oh, right, yes.
Yes.
We organized a George Floyd event, very well attended, but we gave a platform for a lot of voices to be heard. And I think it was the only one. Oh, there was a second one in Salinas. But we worked together with Asia and a couple of other folks to put that together. As part of our LULAC, we immediately saw the need during COVID to serve the community in providing food distributions. So we started providing food distributions, I think March 10th, sometime around that time. We started off in Chular and then began to expand all over the county and other counties. So, and that's how I met Asia, and I applaud her for her leadership in the Juneteenth, and it's grown bigger and better.
Thank you.
And look forward to continuing.
And you helped us move chairs the first go round. We had to get chairs from North High. We forgot about that anyway. It's nice to have friends who own a truck.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So I'll just dive in and I'll just talk about MacGregor definitely lit it up with activism. When we think about activism and being an ally, if you all want to just define what it means to be an ally, and Devin last time had brought up this idea of people should identify you as an ally versus you self-identifying yourself as an ally. But who wants to share like how you got involved in activism and service and your role as an ally in those areas? Whoever wants to start.
Okay, I can start.
All right.
So I mean, I think my role is my education, that I can use my education, the education that I was privileged to have, and through Sylvan, when I get young students between pre-K up to adult that come in there and we teach them reading, writing, math, and you know, this summer I would tell the students, I'm not just teaching you to read, I'm teaching you to think. I'm teaching you to think about what you're reading into, come up with your own opinions about it. So I feel like we can really do a lot for our community if we have educated readers, thinkers in our community. Through Hartdell, I teach early American history, and I use Howard Zinn's People's History, and it blows a lot of the kids' minds away.
Been using that book. Go ahead.
But I have to tell you, we do listen to it because they don't read it. When I sign it to be read, it's not read. So we listen. And then we work on writing and discussing, and I always tell them I don't want to hear me. I know my opinion. I'm bored with me. I want to hear what you think about it. And it's you know, it's tough. I have to really scaffold it and walk them through it so that they feel comfortable and can say what they think about it. And then, you know, when I first applied for Hartnell, it was during the pandemic, and because Sylvan, we didn't shut down completely. We went online, but I lost a lot of students, and I had to still pay my rent. So since I have a master's in history, I applied at Hartnell, and Rising Scholars program was the first it took me, and it was correspondence with the prison the first go round. But teaching at the prison, I teach later American history after the Civil War, and I also use Zinn. And keep in mind, the majority of my students at the prison, no matter what yard I'm on, A, B, C, or D, it's mostly African American men. Those are my
Talk
students,
about it.
the majority. And it's interesting to teach this, you know, history, and they, you know, they're like, Miss Swenson, well, you're white. I am, but I was also raised by a father who had a degree in civil rights and was a civil rights officer for the federal government. So that's just, I was raised that way, raised that you include everybody, that everyone has to have a seat at the table, that we have to help each other. So definitely, you know, the education piece, that's where I want to get people going. Now, you know, the other places through these, like LULAC, Council 2055, we give out scholarships. We had the Latina Leads, where we had young middle school girls come and get STEM because they tend to drop out. So with these programs, we try to find where are the holes, where can we fill in, where can we help out. And I think, you know, as an ally,
So prepared. Go girl.
you know, I want to connect, because one thing my dad said, he said it to LULAC Council, when each of us individual are like this, but together we're like this. So we have to unite. So I always try to connect people and get people together. You know, everyone has different talents. Everyone brings something different to the table that we can help our community. So, you know, I think my education, my ability to unite, those are the ways that I think I can help ally.
Real quick, you talk about the demographics of the students that you're teaching in the prison. And I want to ask, like, support-wise, you're, like you say, you're showing up as Cary. as an educator, what kind of support do you get, or do you have any struggles with the staff there, with the COs, with the other personnel that work there, being that you're an educator, right?
You know, I would say most of the COs are really lovely to work with. I mean, they're very nice. The B yard, I struggle. I struggle with the B yard because it's kind of a zoo, and I think right at the very end when you're walking across, there's a picture of John Wayne. And I'm like, why is that
Still there?
Because the C yard, you have
Interesting.
Kobe Bryant, you know, and there's a couple COs that just have I mean, when they're nasty to the inmates or my students, then it's hard to teach them because I see, and then I can tell they don't like what I'm teaching always. You know, but
That's why I brought that up. Are they supportive of your curriculum? And then this curriculum, this conversation then goes after class is over, all this
Right.
critical thinking and this awareness that you're raising.
you know, no one has directly said anything to me. I see sometimes some are interested. Some I see put their head down and act like they're not listening. They're not, you know, they don't care. You know, I mean, if you want to call it critical race theory, whatever you want to call it, it's called real history.
It's called real history.
Actual history. And
What happened?
people, as Americans, we deserve to know our real history. And just because you're white does not mean that there's something wrong with you. It means we need to know how to do better. And, you know, for me, I need to I can't decide for Asia what she needs to tell me. She needs, and that's where we have to have that communication and openness and be open and not be defensive about these issues. And as white people, not be defensive.
Well said.
That's amazing. That is amazing. I want you to come and talk to our Peace Center just about the way you teach this book and what you just, if you would.
Sure.
I'm on the board of our local Peace and Justice Center, and we often have very interesting conversations about how you can't have peace in the world if we don't have peace in our communities, peace in our homes, and peace in our hearts. And there's some things happening here that are really inspiring. The reduction of gang killing, you have no idea what it used to be like. It's so much, and the commitment, I think we have so much hope, so much hope. To be an ally means to not make it about you. And to look at it, you don't just pick something that you think is the cause of the week. That's following the dog whistles. When you look at society, you look at who is vulnerable, because that's who needs their voices spoken. And if you are articulate and educated, it's your obligation to use that voice to speak for people who are not articulated. So who is the most vulnerable in our town of Salinas? The people who are homeless, the people who don't have correct papers, and the people who are in our jail. And those are the people who are vulnerable. They are the ones that are vulnerable. So if we speak, whether we're a city council person, we need to look, because these people are often not visible. And there was a tragic situation, it was a county thing, not up to the city, where there was a hunger strike in our county jail under the last sheriff. A hunger strike is a nonviolent action. It is an action that only harms them. It was an opportunity to use nonviolent negotiation because they were being nonviolent. I mean, you can't negotiate with rioters in a prison, of course. We know that. But you can talk to hunger strikers.
Yeah.
That's the approved. But our sheriff, former sheriff, ridiculed them in print, which is a human rights violation condemned by international law. So we need to have respect, and we need to, as articulate, educated people who are city council people and sit on councils, we need to always look for the people who don't and can't come to our commissions instead of complaining, well, nobody came to our commission meeting. We need to go to them. So I think that Salinas is a remarkable town. The recovery we've made from that gang violence was a community-wide event. And if we take that, our juvenile hall has been almost emptied by the restorative justice program. Went from 60% recidivism to 10. It is wonderful. We need to get restorative justice into the high schools, where it's even more effective so they don't get into juvenile justice at all. And there's no reason. We have so much in our county that could be peace in our hearts, peace in our parks, peace in our cities, peace in our land, peace in our nation.
Pass the plate. I'll give you $1 for that one. So education and vulnerable folks, Andrew, and being an ally, let's hear your take on it.
Well, I had never really thought about it as being an ally. I saw the question, but reflecting on what you two said, and I think helping people move chairs is a way of being an ally, right? Picking up coffee, being an ally, being supportive, being a member of the city council. I always tell Asia, what do you need? Because if I'm in a position to be able to assist, I want to do that.
But Andrew, you're being funny, but you've written a lot of letters. You've showed up at a lot of school board meetings.
Right.
So I think,
But
yes, moving chairs is definitely allyship, but you have put yourself in some tight situations to speak up for folks who, as MacGregor and Cary have said, don't have a voice, or they've never been at the table or may never make it to the table.
Right. No, I know we've done a lot of different work, Chris and I and Cary, and we've worked on a lot of different issues with school districts. At this moment, I don't get to do as much of the groundwork, but I get to do other exciting things like get Asia to be on the Police Advisory Commission, hopefully the chair soon.
You know what? I'm going to interrupt. We're going to get back to this question.
But
we're going to get back to this question right here. Your service to the city of Salinas and your history there.
Right.
Yeah, don't be using this as I see what you're doing. Let me
Right,
turn
yeah.
all the way around and look
No,
at you for real.
We get to do
But
a lot of.
I want to talk real quick about going to the State Department of Education, like things like that, where here's a parent who's been in this educational system, getting nowhere fast, right? I don't want to use my example, but there are a lot of parents who have had complaints, district level, school level, and you and Chris have shown up for them, right? And you taught me and a few other parents about educational code, for example, how to file a formal complaint, for example. If you want to talk about
Sure, I think
that.
through my own experiences, I've learned a lot about it. Currently, I'm able to walk people through. Right now, that they're actually, I think it was last Thursday, one of the parents who I'm helping, the United States Department of Education OCR division opened an investigation into a case here. So that's what I've been able to do. I walk people through how to advocate for their kids. Not always being the advocate, but empowering people, I think is my biggest goal. I'd like, one of my goals is to do a series of videos for parents, because sometimes parents have frustrations because they think that there's nobody out there. And school districts, maybe not through design, or maybe through design, I'm not sure, or government entities frustrate people. And so, there's a lot of parents who are alone, or a lot of people who think that there's no help. And so part of it is just providing that little support or that little knowledge to them so they can take it to the next level. So that's something I think is important, and something I've been able to do collaboratively with like Chris or Cary or some of our LULAC or other folks.
I'm going to also switch gears too. When we think about law, police transparency, and things of that nature, you also advocated to get video cam footage from some of our officers, and then we'll bring that back over here to you ladies as well. When we think about allyship and how we can empower folks, those who are subject to, right, criminal investigation or find themselves in court, also how to prevent that, and what would you suggest has been really effective in your role in supporting?
Well, I'm a firm believer in transparency and what is true transparency. I think the public should get to see, without infringing on other people's rights as much as they can. Chris Barrera and I, for many years, requested body cam footage when we would get an incident reported to us. Sometimes it happened the way someone reported it, sometimes it didn't. And it was a big benefit to the community to be able to see that. I'll give you an example of why it's so important. And this is a little known story, but there was a gentleman whose name was Gerardo, an indigenous gentleman who was killed died after he pulled out a firearm by the Salinas Police Department. He made bad decisions. There was a lot of stories going around about whether or not he could speak.
He's the one in Del Monte?
Yes.
By the little, yes, that's right near me. That was terrible.
Right. So there was a big outcry from the community because there was claims that he didn't speak English and he only was spoken indigenous language. LULAC was one of the few organizations who did not take a position, and we got a lot of flack for it because people said, "Well, how could you not say anything?" That's why I like transparency, because I need to be able to see things before I say things, because otherwise we could stick our foot in our mouth and we'll lose our credibility. Unfortunately, the police department at the time did not release the body cam footage, but the chief of police came out and made a statement and said he did in fact speak Spanish, and we had previous interactions. I made a body cam footage request for those incidents. It was denied at the time. And so Chris Barrera and I at the time were very persistent. We in fact did a sit-in at the city of Salinas, which was not advertised, or we didn't go for the publicity despite some people's allegations. We just sat there. We have to maintain our jobs and our families. So we did, I think it was 3 days of half-day sit-ins. But at the end of those sit-ins, we were able to view the body cam footage. And it turns out that Gerardo, in fact, did speak Spanish. And the community didn't know that because at the time the police department refused to release the body cam footage. And that goes a long way, releasing body cam footage goes a long way to building trust with the community. And so, I'm still a firm believer that needs to occur.
Yeah.
And that's something I'm continually advocating for.
And moving chairs.
And moving chairs. And getting coffee and...
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to switch it back over. So, ladies, when we think about police transparency, when we think about criminality, and we bring this back into the context of Salinas Juneteenth, what is our role? I think I asked this, and I'll ask it a little differently. Juneteenth is just an event, but it marks this celebration of freedom, and it also highlights this history that we've been talking about, the many histories of this country. How do you think our event ties into some of these issues that have been raised, and especially the populations in which, like you said, you serve in your role as an educator and MacGregor as a peace activist? And you also, I want to make sure we talk about the legal support, the NAACP, and LULAC has also worked in conjunction with NAACP in advocacy. So whoever wants to start.
Well, the difference between having an NAACP and not having one is big. Very often people say, oh, our peace board is small and getting older, but it makes a big difference to have that presence. In the 1980s, when my husband was working with the NAACP, Charles Clements was chair, Fred Holt was active. This is a long 30 years ago. There was an incident where someone gave a KKK medallion to an African-American Western stage actor who was living with a white girl, and they were moving in. And this was the 80s, and it was in South Salinas, in an apartment building. And there was a press conference and an investigation. And there we were on the front page, Jesse Sanchez, Rick Robbins, Charles Clements, Fred Holt, calling for an investigation. And it was amazing the things that came out, that people told stories of cross burnings on Fremont Peak. I mean, back in the 20s, from the old days. It's like...
Mr. Chambers brought some of that stuff up. Go ahead, yeah.
It was just very interesting to hear. And it was, you start to know that our valley has everything in it. All of them, all of the Native Americans and the traces of the Civil War. Studying the history of this valley is fascinating. It's rich with history and people and even famous authors and color, and we're lucky to live here. And I think we have a good future in front of us. It's been a delight to meet you.
So, I mean, I think that the Juneteenth event is a great opportunity for, to gather kids and adults and people of all ethnicities to come and understand what's about. I think it's also a great springboard for more events throughout the year, more events to educate.
We're getting
and read. And like, for example, I brought this book because a good book to read is The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein, and it's about the redlining. And, and these are still some of the book where, do not sell to an African-American family, do not sell to, these are laws on our books and that are still across the country. So it shows you the systemic racism and why it's so hard for people of color to get ahead, right? Because, and I had a white grandfather who could give me a legacy because he was white and had that ability to climb up, right? I know that that's the white privilege. So, I think it's a great event, and I think it'll get bigger, and I think it'll create more awareness. I think it can create more workshops and ways to just get people involved and understand. I did a little research, so the African American population of Salinas is 2,162.
Talk about it.
And a half.
And a half.
Somebody's pregnant.
So, that's a small population, but it's something that we need to be educated by that population that's here. Let us hear your story. Let us know what you need.
When we looked it up, we saw that actually the largest black population in Monterey County is in Soledad at 9%.
Yes.
And, and we have a long legacy across the river in Seaside. But those numbers, the last census, it's only 12 less than what was counted in Seaside. So the other thing is that there are a lot of stories. Like we talked about these legacy families who were here in Salinas, and then this back and forth, going back to what MacGregor was talking about, work being here, cost of living. Like, I couldn't afford to live anywhere but Salinas at the time that I graduated. And when you talk about redlining, I wanted to ask MacGregor, since you've got the history, wasn't it true? I was told that the east side of Alisal, like that was where it was affordable, and there was still kind of some inherent racism that happened when folks first started to come to Salinas. I don't know if you want to speak about that, or Andrew, you know about that.
It's a layer. It's a very rich layer, and you can go back. The Alisal part of Salinas was not incorporated until the late 70s, and I moved here in 75. So it has many features of a poor area, like all the poles are above ground, while modern cities, they're below ground. So you go to East Salinas and you just see this infrastructure that's never been improved. And in fact, until Jesse G. Sanchez and Fernando Armenta and Lily Cervantes redistricted Salinas by suing it so we could have district elections, we never had, we had white mayors all the way, one Japanese, that's it, Henry Habino, but it was all the way, you could just see him. And then all of a sudden, boom!
Just like that, a splash of color.
And as soon as they were elected, we had the bread box in East Salinas, we had the recreation center, we'd been neglected, we had all the high-density apartments were built on Laurel and Garner. They're still there, hell apartments with nowhere for children to play, just cars to park. And we had principals, we had school board people that were slumlords in their own districts. That is over. I got names. But that is all over. That doesn't happen anymore. We have come so far. But part of it is because things were so bad. It's a very harsh world, agricultural labor, because it's hard to do. So as soon as people get any privilege at all, they stop. If you don't believe me, go try to hire people to work in the fields. It's hard. When I worked for the United Farm Workers, I tried it. I was young and strong at the time. It is very, very hard work, so they will always want vulnerable people who are willing to work that hard for that little money. And so there will always be new people coming. They'll change.
It's a revolving door, yeah.
It'll revolve. But as civil rights awareness people, we need to know that in the red states, they are passing alien land laws, saying that no one who is from China, Iran, or Russia can buy land.
That sounds like what she's just talking
This is
about.
this is the this is the early drumbeat. We need to pay attention. Just because California's not, Texas is doing it. All of them, and they've got it lined up. If you look at the civil liberties, they're very concerned. This is the first step to concentration camps, internments, isolation
Registries.
labels. It's the first step. Is the alien land laws, and we know it, and it's happening. So here we need to ask: is anyone harassing our Chinese residents? Do they feel safe? Because in some places, with the pandemic and with this drumbeat of anti-China that for some reason is being beaten, I see no reason.
Anti-Asian hate is
It's
not
yeah,
just
but that's
Chinese,
just because we're so.
Vietnamese, right?
Filipino.
Japanese, Filipino,
I know.
Pacific Islander. Unfortunately,
But
we're still
here
looking
in
through
Salinas,
Chinese
we
instead
need to
of.
make sure that this poison isn't being brought into our county, and make sure, because I was listening to a seminar, and she said sometimes people from Asian cultures don't want to cause trouble. So if they're being harassed, they see the polite thing to do is to be quiet about it. So as police commissioners and as city council members, we just need to say, in case anybody in our town is feeling threatened for being Chinese or Asian, please let us know. Just so that we know. Because we know it's happening, and it's not big in
just
California,
not
but
being
it has
reported.
been in the past. So
Yeah.
that's the end of that. We need to look. Who's vulnerable? Not just who comes to us. It's too much of a tendency in commissions and city councils to respond to the weak, squeaky wheel. So the selfish, mouthy NIMBYs get a lot of attention, and the people who can't, who are too tired or too frightened,
You said the mouthy Mindy's?
NIMBYs, not
NIMBYs.
not in my
NIMBYs.
backyard. The selfish, mouthy NIMBYs.
Okay.
You know who I mean.
I do. I was like, I've got a new term. I want to also bring in, when we talk about the vulnerable, MacGregor, when we talk about the vulnerable and we think about housing and the disenfranchised,
Yes.
I want to definitely make sure we give some time to talk about our unhoused friends, relatives, and family members. And being that we talk about redlining and these, I'm going to make sure we have some information, alien land laws. How do we bring our unhoused folks into the conversation and advocate for them and show up as an ally? And I'm going to let you start, Andrew, because I know you also have done some work and showed up for folks. And you go to the source, like you're saying, not always the squeaky wheels and the what is it, the mouthy Mindy's?
Well, Mindy
What
now.
about Quiet Quincy?
Quiet Quincy.
How do we find Quiet Quincy?
You know, I'm probably the least experienced, the least knowledgeable about the unhoused. And too often I feel that representatives of people in government speak for people and without speaking to them and without actually knowing what they need. And so it was, I believe, January, we had I believe, don't quote me on the date, but
It was
we had a
close to Martin
retreat.
Luther King Day.
Yeah. And so I proposed, and it's supposed to be coming forward, I haven't followed up on it, but I will now, an unhoused committee. So instead of, homeless alliance or homeless groups, why don't we give those that are being affected the most a voice at the table? And so that's my next step is to make sure that committee gets formed with a mix of the people that are affected.
Can I say something?
Of course.
I think we need to make sure when we do that then we can educate the Salinas residents, because when I bring up, and how, especially, there's a lot of ignorance I hear here. Well, they're homeless because they want to be, right? These are things, but they're homeless because they're doing drugs. Well, they're homeless, like, when it's something I feel like I try to talk about it and get community members to address it, there's an excuse. And I think, I don't have the numbers, I don't have the data, but when Chris was writing, I looked at some cities doing some work on homelessness, and first we do have to get some data. And then somebody told me, well, there is data. Well, I don't know where that data is. You know, why are you unhome? Why are you homeless? What are the reasons? And sure, there's going to be some people who maybe want to be homeless, but I don't think that's the majority. And you have a lot of women and children who are homeless, but you just don't see them.
Right.
You have a lot of working people living in their cars, right, using the YWCA to take a shower. I want to just, like, when we look at Monterey County housing and urban development, we look at HUD, and we look at the long, what is the Section 8 wait? I think you're dead before you get called back if you still got the same cell phone number. And I shouldn't say that jokingly, but I've heard many stories of families that have been on that list for years. So I know there's data, you know, a community, I'm not going to rattle off names, but going back to CASP and what MacGregor mentioned, there's a group of folks meeting at 7 in the morning talking about the homeless problem, quote unquote, and offering solutions. And then you learned some things when you started asking questions, because you do that very well, when you started asking questions about some of these organizations that have been operating for a long time, particularly in Chinatown. How are the funds managed? How are people getting employed? What is the kind of like routine, and how does one even file a complaint? That's the other thing when we think about advocacy. Folks don't know what they don't know. So here they're even quote unquote sheltered, but they're experiencing racism. They're experiencing mistreatment.
Maybe
They've got health
issues.
mental health, right? Or there may be addiction. They don't know how to speak up for themselves, or maybe they've given up on that whole process. So you want to talk about that and then I'll bring it back to you.
Sure, no, I mean, it goes back to educating and teaching people, because even as we create these committees of homeless, you know, I saw the police advisory committee, we have to do a better job of educating people on how to participate in these and how to get things done. So I think for me, it's really, you know, I like your approach, you know, with what you do in Chinatown, where you just sit there and listen. You know, I've heard some stories, people are like, well, I just don't have anybody. And I mean, it's already difficult to live in Salinas, having support structure, but I can't imagine lifting yourself out of situations without any support structure. So, you know, that's a priority and difficult.
Do you want to talk about any of the conversations that you've had in advocating with the city manager and city attorney, or should we?
Well, yeah, I mean, one of the things actually with Councilmember Barrera's leadership, we're bringing forward, I think it's going to be in October, is a sanctioned encampment. So, you know, conversations, actually that started around the same time that I visited Chinatown, and Tony and I met with some folks from down there, and who are just looking for a place to live, where they won't have to be moved, where they won't. So that is coming in October. Those are conversations we have with our city manager, so that's going to be up for an agenda. City has property or is looking at property. We'll be bringing a presentation on how it could work. We've met with Wes White and David Balch and others to see what's worked in other locations and trying to bring that to Salinas. You know, there's going to have to be a lot of different solutions for different folks.
I do think it's important to look at some successes at other places and see. We don't have to reinvent the wheel
Right.
all the time.
Yeah, we had a Zoom meeting. I don't remember the city off the top of my head, but with somebody who's been successful.
MacGregor, you brought this up at our last police commission or committee
Yes.
about some training, and you were saying human rights. You want to talk a little bit more about that?
Well,
The human rights that are being violated or unhoused people.
see, what happens is there's a very high risk of human rights violations if you're going to have the police clearing an encampment. There's almost no way to do that without stealing the people's things, because if you have someone who's a hoarder and they're also homeless, it's going to be very hard to clear out a creek bed where they might be at risk of drowning in a flood, because they did clear out the creek beds before the flood. I'll give Salinas credit. I saw them working because they knew the river was coming, and we did not have deaths, homeless drownings. Other cities did. Other cities did, but Salinas was out there because people live in the rivers.
They do.
And we had floods, and no homeless in Salinas died. That's amazing if you looked. if you've looked at the low land. But in those correct and compassionate evacuations, people were treated badly. Their belongings were taken away, and the police were in an impossible position. So I think that as a link from the city council, we could actually help with the communication before they clear an encampment, help with the communication. Apparently there used to be a police officer whose job was to be liaison, but he retired a year ago and he has not been replaced. That might be a place to start.
Especially since they're giving incentives in the hiring.
Since it might be something that at least where there's a conversation and to let people know. When I went to Gloucester Park for the annual night out, I went to the homeless services and I gave them that paper saying when our police commission meets. And I said, it's an appropriate thing if you know someone who's complaining bitterly about the police. This is an appropriate place for them to come and talk to us. You know, you don't have to, sometimes people just really need to know that someone cares and will listen. Even if we can't solve the problem, which, to be honest, we probably can't, but we can listen, we can respect, and we can treat them as a human being with a valid need. And when you start with that, we have hope.
So as we continue to wrap up, this is always a rich discussion. I feel like we need like 3 parts for each panel. Being in your role as an ally in community, what lessons have you learned or what missteps have you made? And if you could, what would you have done differently if you have a personal story or situations you found yourself in where you step into the plate and I'm gonna support thus and so and do X and Y, and then you get shut down, or nope, that didn't work out as planned.
I think one of the things I learned is to listen. I think sometimes talking to Asia, I say, well, we should do this, and they just hold on a second. maybe that type of support is not what's needed. How about this, right? And so I think that's the biggest thing I've learned is to listen. I tend to. My wife always says I jump. If she's listening to me, hi, honey. I do tend to jump and to try to, sometimes do more than maybe is needed or asked of. So I think that's the most important part.
Andrew, you're just like me. You want to fix things.
Right.
And that's the biggest harm. You need to listen and go through the process. And often people have the power, but, being a bossy know-it-all, we're trying to, so the biggest lesson I've learned is to slow down and listen.
And I'm going to have to concur. I mean, it's where am I putting my time? What am I? I need to, I think, actively see how I can be an ally and listen and find out, because I can use my talents, my skills. Because like Andrew's education, I help a lot of my parents at Sylvan navigate the education system for their kids. My job is to teach them so that, because they're not going to listen to me to schools, and be that advocate for their kids so they don't need me anymore. So I think, educate myself more about the African American population of Salinas. Besides Juneteenth, I don't know what other activities there are or community events or, I need to find out more and educate myself. And when I read books like this, get it out, get other people reading it and understanding and seeing how we can. And the other book that I will have to mention is to read, and I loaned it to a friend, so I don't have it. It's Salinas, A History of Race and Resilience in Agricultural City by Carol Lynn McGibbon. And it's also an excellent book and gives, it gave me a good understanding. So I could start to go, where do I need to start reaching out?
And you can get it at Salinas' only bookstore.
Yes, you can.
Salinas Old Town Book and
That's where I got
Town.
mine. And she was there and she signed it.
Ms. Sullivan.
Trish Sullivan, yes.
Trish Sullivan.
So we give a shout out to our ladies
Yes.
who, so we,
I think even in that book, when I went to the library and I was trying to learn as much as I could, I was told there are some oral histories that are archived there. But she shared that book, and that there's a little, maybe 3 or 4 pages about the African American presence. And so I think it's interesting that, you know, we also have a responsibility to write our own history, to seek our own history, and to make sure that we're just not footnotes on that. You know, I think MacGregor and I, we were talking about the Historical Society. You talked about Carr Lake being named after
Well, I
this
didn't know it was
gentleman.
a slave owner till I heard Chavo's history. I was horrified. We have a lake, Carr Lake, was it Carr, or I don't know, or an slave supporter, but whatever it is, it's like, let's not call it that.
Let's not call it Carr Lake, you know. So there,
Right.
and who has this history? That's the other thing. Like here, it's a privilege, right? To keep us. What does it say? No self, no history. N-O-W, K-N-O-W, no self, no history. If
Yeah.
you know who you are, then you've got a greater sense of like who your potential and who you can be and what the future is going to look like. I want to also share this because in listening to the last panel, we're talking about allyship, but we're really looking at it in the framework of like race and advocacy. But we didn't talk about LGBTQ+. We didn't talk about folks with disabilities or ableism. We didn't talk about immigration and immigrants, not just from South America and Mexico, but, you know, like you're saying, 3 different languages at any given time.
Right.
We've got a large immigrant population, too, in Salinas as well. What are your thoughts on, you know, this larger, broader role of an ally when we cross over gender, sexuality, ableism, ageism, even, you know, thinking about how we show up for others who are different than ourselves? Whoever wants to.
Sure. I think we need to listen first and foremost. You know, I was approached a couple of years ago about the city of Greenfield not having language in their personnel book for LGBTQ plus issues or how to bring up concerns or the way they were being treated. So I think after that, we approached our city manager several times. Actually, we met with him, and you would not believe the roadblocks or the way people managed to ignore issues. And they made commitments to update their personnel book, which I believe was written like in 1992 or something like that. Of course, city manager, I think city manager Wood never followed up with that. I don't think that's ever been done. But it's important to address those issues. Even here in the county and in the city, a lot of policies need to be written to make sure that people get protections. But the other work continues.
Well, I know you also are an advocate for sidewalks, and MacGregor made a comment too about the sidewalks being a hot mess in Salinas in certain areas. So when we think about folks who are not as able-bodied or maybe in a wheelchair or have additional needs,
Or a woman
you know,
pushing her stroller with her
or
baby.
with a stroller and her baby, like this has been, you talked about how much it costs and the whole process to get a sidewalk changed, but how do you think this impacts our community members who have struggles?
This is a very
Mobility.
near and dear topic to me. You know,
I know.
infrastructure has been neglected for a long time.
Yes.
As a new council member, you know, even my colleagues who I am friends with, I'm like, how could you let it get this bad? Because, look, the reality is the city has had money. It just has diverted it to other issues. And our residents, even recently, I think it was a year and a half ago, the city found $30 million. There wasn't a whole lot of news about it,
Found it.
but they found $30 million. Apparently there was money left over at the end of the budget that wasn't being tracked. And I was very excited because at the time I was a member of the Measure G Oversight Committee. And I'm like, man, we're gonna fix so many sidewalks and we're gonna fix so many potholes. But at the time, the city decided not to do anything but put it into reserves. And it was very frustrating to see that. You know, we did move some money recently, but the residents deserve it. You know, they deserve their sidewalks fixed. There are ways that other areas do to address these issues. Not all of them need to be taken out and replaced. They could be grinded down. You know, so there's a lot of different things. I think it's you know, we have a responsibility, and unfortunately, I do think Interestingly enough, I was reading a policy, and if there is an issue, of course, this goes back to educating people and residents on how to address them, right? But if there is an ADA issue in your neighborhood, you could report that, and that may be able to help expedite your sidewalk getting repaired. So I'm also excited to announce that we're finally going to have a pothole plan presented August 22nd. Spread it, far and wide, and I would like to invite the public. I know this is off topic, but
Well, we covering all ground.
but
literally.
I'm going to be honest with you. We have the money in the city of Salinas to fix potholes. We've apparently chosen not to. But on August 22nd, thank you to Councilmember Rocha for his support. There's going to be a pothole plan to address potholes in the city of Salinas. And my request is that the public show up and attend, or email or call or text me or the fellow council members to tell them it's time.
There was that soul brother who came, who talked about his issue. He came to city council a couple of times. I don't know his name, but I know he has been trying to meet with the city manager. So this pothole plan, will it help retroactive stuff? Like how far are we going back, or?
Well,
Maybe
that's
that's
another
another
issue, but I'll just be very quick about that issue. So the city of Salinas received 44 pothole claims this year alone. The city of Salinas paid out 0 pothole claims this year. The last time a pothole claim was paid was, I think 3 or 4 years ago. And so I think that system is broken. And the city should have been more honest with folks and said, hey, well, don't waste your time filing a claim because we're not going to pay it. But, so my apologies to the residents, but we're going to do better. We're more committed to doing better.
Okay. Thank you.
So any
Just to
final
touch-
thoughts? Go
well, just
ahead.
To touch on the issue like LGBTQ, being in education and working with students, pre-K through adult at Hartnell, I ran to students, just be kind, just be nice. I'm there, I tell students, I'm here to educate you, whether if you're here for Sylvan, for reading, math, writing, you be you. I'm going to teach you your subjects. We're not here to judge, we're not here, you be who you are. I'm teaching history, I'm here to teach you to learn. I'm not here to judge you. So just be nice. Be nice to people.
Respect, too. Respecting. MacGregor, and then I'm going to just give us an opportunity to do final thoughts.
Just
Any
thank you-
comments about
Thank
the
you very much for
allyship?
this opportunity. I have learned a very great deal from the other panelists, and I'm looking forward to working together on the serious problems. And Juneteenth celebration is a real step forward for Salinas, but it's based on a long history of multicultural productivity in our valley.
In our valley. So as we wrap up, how do we learn together and grow together in allyship when it comes to these issues about equity, about being inclusive, about raising awareness? What are your final thoughts on that? And then I also want to give you all an opportunity to talk about the groups you're a part of and share.
Sure. My idea is to continue to stay in communication and build that group that we could, put any egos aside that we may have to reach out for help, right? Sometimes there's these issues. We think we can tackle them by ourselves, but the reality is, like Cary's dad said, you're just one, but if you have 5, you can knock it out better. So I think if we continue to build these relationships, we'll be more successful.
Yeah, I agree with Andrew. I think we just moving forward, we need to have more get-togethers like this, more time to sit at the table and talk and invite those people we know who should have a seat at the table and invite them, hear what they have to say. For some people, it might be the first time somebody asked them, how do you feel about this? What are your thoughts? I tell my students all the time, I learn from you. That's why I don't speak. I want you to speak because I will learn something new. So we need to go out and meet people and learn something new. And we are smart enough to solve it. We are brave enough to solve it. We can solve it, maybe not overnight, but those of us who care, we can reach out to other people that care, and we can solve our problems.
We're stronger together for sure.
Well, the organization that I work with is the Peace Center. We have an office in Seaside, and we try to be county, but to be honest, we're not much in South County like a lot of work. We're mostly Salinas and the peninsula. But the purpose of having peace is not just international peace. The young people today have been at constant war. There has been war. People who are 24 years today, we have been at war since they were born. So we have this war culture. So we fight each other because that's the way we've learned to respond. So opposing war internationally, pointing out how much money is being wasted on weapons that the military doesn't even want, like the nuclear weapons, we could save so much money and use it for potholes. We could have beautiful streets. So I think that bringing up peace, whether
We
it's
can house some
peace
people, yeah.
in
We have more
Salinas,
cultural
peace in our
events.
hearts, peace in our schools, and peace in our nation. So I feel that bringing peace to all levels of our civic life is essential. And I know that the Rotary is very active in international peace, and I would like to talk to you about
Great.
that later.
Yes.
There's your plug, come on.
Your turn.
Oh,
Plug your Rotary.
yeah, so I'm a Steinbeck Rotarian. I have been since 2011. The Steinbeck Rotary Club, there's 5 or 6 in Salinas. We're the only morning club, so for all you crazy people who want to get up early in the morning, on a Wednesday morning, we meet at the American Legion on Laurel Street. We definitely involved.
Tell us, what's the mission of the Rotary for folks who don't know? Like, I don't even think I know. What does the Rotary do? What is?
I mean, the Rotary is to get like-minded people together. Originally, what was his name? I was thinking still in there. Anyway, the founder of Rotary, Paul Harris, was white men, businessmen got together to help their community. It's changed, and it's, you want like-minded community members, whether, you own a business, small business, you're a nonprofit, manager, whatever, come together, meet, there's fellowship, get to know each other, and then see what, the idea is that, and I think we lose track of this sometimes, what needs are in your community. That's what are your needs? And our club, the Steinbeck, we focus a lot on education. That's been a big, and that's what kind of attracted me to LULAC Counts 2055, because there is a big education component there. But we also, I know each year for Rotary, there's a different international president, and this year one of the focuses on mental health. So that's an area that our club is looking to work for. The beauty of Rotary and the mission is that because when you put money into Rotary International, your district level, it grows. So if I put in $1, it can become $10. So I felt like that was like, I don't have a lot of money, but if I can put a little bit in, it can grow. And then we can bring it back to our community and help out our community. That's what we should be doing, right? That's, and sometimes I feel with Rotary, like my club, I think we lose folks to that, and I'm trying to bring it back to that, because what we don't want is photo ops. Now look, because this is the thing, I don't want to, we're not going out and helping the community to feel good. That's not the reason for doing it. That's not the reason for Rotary doing good things. We don't have to be out in the public. We don't have to feel good about it. We just have to do it and help other people, wherever the need is.
And do you have a website, Cary, for your campaign? How can people get in touch with you?
Well, just Sylvan Learning. Look me up.
Sylvan Learning? Okay.
I'm there 24/7, Monday through Thursday, 12 to 7:30.
She's sleeping at the Sylvan, y'all.
Save
12
money on
to
rent.
5:30
Don't tell too
Not a bad
much.
idea.
on Friday.
Can we do that?
Yeah, if you look for me at Sylvan, I will be there.
Okay. Anything else? Are we passing?
I think, let's see, did I have any more? I took notes.
I see.
An educator.
Yeah, I try to.
Organizations or resources, and then if you don't have it now, we can always add it later, because I know we're getting close for time.
Yeah.
But
Right. No, I think that's pretty much it. If you reach out to me at Sylvan if you have any education questions. I work a lot with parents. I work a lot closely with the schools. I can tell you from my experience this past year since the COVID, our kids K through third are not reading. They are not reading. They are not focusing. It's a problem, and I don't think we're addressing it. I'm trying to work with some school officials to figure out a way to get money and labor and help into that K third, because that's
It's crucial.
It's crucial.
it's crucial. So parents, have your kids read to you. See if they can read.
Well, and you know, at third grade, they start plotting for your other job, for
And
the
the
prison. So
prison.
that's why we really need to get on top of that.
Yes, we do.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Councilman
Well,
Sandoval.
yes. Other than the various committees that I'm assigned to as a member of the city council,
Which are?
which includes the Salinas Valley Solid Waste Authority, the Litter and Debris Committee. I'm at a loss for words at the moment, but there are several of them. I'm also a member of LULAC, the National Civil Rights Organization, and I'm going to make a plug for our Black and White Scholarship,
Yes.
which I'm inviting all the panelists
All
here
of us,
to
yeah.
attend.
Okay.
It's our biggest fundraiser of the year. Recently, we had a sponsorship from Vallarta Market, who has contributed some tables back to us to give out to some community members. I'll have to check with Chris, but I'm pretty sure it's okay. No, you're coming. And we did, I think, 60 scholarships this year, Cary?
60, 64?
64 scholarships to local Salinas high school students, and every year it's growing more and more. And I'm excited to be part of that and
And
continue.
And do
LULAC
students-
National matches what we raise. Like
Oh, right. Yes, so it's kind of like Rotary. You know, we send money to our national organization, and they gave us an additional 60%. So we also looking to expand LULAC councils in other areas so they can take advantage of that scholarship.
Can I ask a clarifying
Sure.
question? Do you have to be of Latin American heritage to apply to the scholarship or be awarded the scholarship?
I believe for the LULAC National Scholarship, you do,
Yeah.
but we have a couple of private ones.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other groups you want to mention or things coming down in the future regarding boots or anything? you wanna share
Nothing like
right
that
now?
yet, nothing
No?
like that
You
yet,
sure?
but we have a lot of good things coming in the city of
okay.
Salinas. And
You want to know secrets.
yes, we have a lot of exciting things. I look forward to continuing to work with Age and all of you.
Good, good. Well, with that being said, besides the Peace Center, anything else, MacGregor? Because I know you got, we could car less. Do you want to talk about your
No,
car
I don't
less?
I just
real
always,
quick?
I just always think that one of the biggest things we can do to preserve our beautiful environment is to become less dependent on cars, which will build up our public transit so that it's better. And it's really the fit of us that should be using the buses, not the frail. We have it all backwards. We have the frail on the buses and the fit in the cars. We need to switch it.
Go ahead,
Because
MacGregor.
you have to be strong
I
to
have-
walk to a bus
I
stop.
have
and to-
some ideas.
Well, I'll talk to you later.
Because I agree with
Car
you.
less.
I lived in
Mrs.
Boulder,
MacGregor.
Colorado it's a very walking-friendly town.
So anyway,
So, as we wrap up, thanks again. I want to thank the Wave Street wonderful crew here. Check us out, salinasjuneteenth.com. If you want to get in touch with us, salinasjuneteenth@gmail.com. Thank you so much. This has been part 2 of our Allies Aligned panel. And again, we appreciate you listening. Feel free to comment, and we'll see you around. Thanks again. All right.